All right, thank you, everyone. Call the meeting to order.
Chairman,
Yes,
prior to start, this being the last meeting prior to Memorial Day, I believe we should observe a moment of silence in honor of our veterans.
all right, is that motion?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second it.
Yes, seconded. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. Thank you, Bob, for that, bringing that up. Appreciate it as a veteran.
Yeah. I know it's a weak way, but
Yeah. Agenda additions and deletions. I see here, Katie, that you want to delete the Lister Schoolhouse discussion.
Yeah, they asked me to not put that the first night.
Okay, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to delete the Lister Schoolhouse discussion.
Is there a second?
second.
All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And under highway, we would have a Coal River Road, Windy Lane discussion. The road breaking up there, an individual came forward.
Hey, Mike, can you speak up a little for the old people in the back?
Huh? Anyway, make a motion, bring that up under, road commissioners.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Is there any other additions or deletions? Okay, hearing none. Oh, let's see, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Did we just do that?
Yeah, we
I've
did.
done it.
Did it already.
I just wanted to make sure that Carol heard it.
Thank you, Mike, appreciate it.
Okay, no problem. Highway Road Commissioners report.
At time being right now, we're working on top of the Big Hill, Corderline Road. Cutting trees down and, doing some ditching. We're hoping not to have to that project there, but something's happened up in the woods and stuff and diverted water and, we had quite a washout on the Big Hill there, the last storm we had. So we're trying to, with what we're doing, we'll correct that problem. With that being said, within 2 weeks, we'll be starting to mow roadsides. Just to let everybody know to be cautious when you see the mower. Also, you want me going to we have a driveway access permit.
Yes, go ahead.
That's on West Temeth Road, and I don't have the application. Mike, you have it right there.
You wanna read it?
West Temeth Road, a quarter mile from Wacom Mountain Road on the right hand side. It was formerly, the property's been sold, I believe, was the Nancy Decker property. And the new owners are Kathleen Brown. And Katie and I actually looked at the site today, whereabouts they want to have access to West Temeth Road, and there's no culvert required at that location.
All right,
So I deem that to be approved by the select board.
all right, and would you make that a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, and in that motion, would you authorize the chairperson of the board to,
Chairperson, person of the board to sign off on it for the select board.
is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anything else, besides the
It's
Coal River?
been brought to attention about Culver Road. Actually, it's what we call Sheehy's Corner. It's at the corner of Windy Lane and Cold River Road. With that road being on that corner, it's not narrow, but the way the angle is, especially with the heavy log trucks coming down around the corner and stuff, they're eating off the asphalt. The only way I can see fixing it is we'll have to go in there and take out the broken out pavement and bring in some hot mix and lay it out the best we can to support that corner.
You have any kind of a timeline to get up there and work on
This
it?
is something that's gonna have to be within the next 2 weeks here.
Yeah, I would think.
If you do that, Cash, won't they just continue to move to the right on that
This
corner?
is-
And you're gonna have the
that's-
same problem
That's the
again.
issue, that it's gonna.
I don't know the answer. I've looked at it a number of times
And that's-
myself.
We ran into that problem up on, where we just paved on Walker Mountain Road with the S-turbs on top of the big hill here,
Yeah,
trying to support that, and we'd actually, before we even paved it last year, the year before, we actually went in there and hand-filled it with an apron. That's what happened. They ended up driving into the ditch, and
Yeah.
the road just keeps moving over and
yeah,
over and over.
yeah,
And
that's.
it's really not too much. You can't put markers there, then if you do, then they run over them, and
Yeah, oh, yeah.
so.
Yeah. Because no, I've talked with people, 2 or 3 of them, well, I spoke to you about it, and
Yeah.
that looks to me almost like a no-win situation, unless possibly at some point move the road over to the right-hand side of the road, the whole thing, and then possibly
Yeah.
guardrail down around there, but then they'll run over the guardrail
And they'll
probably.
be smashing the guardrails too. Another thing, we had a little serious accident on Alfresh Road last week. Katie met with Lafayette on the guardrail work. They ripped the guardrails out at the bridge on Alfresh Road on one corner, one side.
Yeah.
So we're
It's on the north side, right?
on the northwest side of the bridge.
Yeah.
Took out all the guardrails. That's the cable guardrail. And with the new regulations of the state, we don't even think we can replace it. They can actually fix it with the cable. They'll have to put what we call the planks of the guardrails. In that case, probably have to do that whole side, the whole length of that bridge. So they were gonna be getting back to us a cost estimate.
And what's gonna happen there?
Yeah. And then we'll have to figure out the insurance and stuff like that, go from there.
I had one question for the road commissioner. Up across from Cindy Davis' property,
Yep, Lock Mountain.
yeah, where the old mill
The
used
mill?
to be, there's that drain hole that's in there.
We-
Is there- I see somebody put a stake in the ground and put a little flag on it.
We need to get some stone in there.
Is there any chance temporarily of putting up 2 reflectors or something along those lines? Because people walking through there.
Right, we could actually put a linear stake there.
Okay.
We could.
I did just get a phone call and I said that I would mention it. Okay.
Actually, I've forgotten all about it, just Cindy that asked me about it. That's okay.
There's other people that get phone calls. All right. Anything else, Cash?
That's all I have right now.
Any board members have anything for Cash? All right, guest we have Sergeant Cross, right? All right,
He's under the animal control ordinance.
He's down farther, Mike.
yeah, okay, well, I just, as a guest, I just want to acknowledge that you're here. And, any public comments on issues so far?
Can I just ask a question?
Yes.
Are we gonna get lines on Walker Mountain Road? Because you were mentioning, I think that would help.
This is
You know, people staying on the road. and
somewhat,
Some lines.
it's up to the state when they'll do it,
Okay.
and if they got paid, because it's all been
Yeah, that's what
backordered.
I thought. I thought there was something about the paint. Okay, just, putting it out there.
Yes?
Yes.
Cash, I'm Jane Sarno. We've spoken. I just wondered if you've had a chance to even look at Sonia Lane.
No, I haven't.
Okay. It's
I'll
on your
most last
agenda
week.
somewhere?
Oh, yeah.
Good, thank you. I took out the garden. Just want you to know.
Okay. All right, anything else, public comments? Let's have a discussion on the inclusion statement. And first of all, I would ask two select board members who were present at that meeting, your thoughts. Art, would you go first on it?
I kind of prepared a little thing here to read. I started out thinking the town didn't need an inclusion statement. I hadn't seen any discrimination perpetrated by the town or any town official. After talking to Dave Potter, his opinion was, why would anybody be against an inclusion statement? So I started to show the inclusion statement that the people here had presented to the select board, to the citizens, to get their thoughts. The feedback I got was mostly they didn't think that an inclusion statement was necessary. I was concerned about actually listing groups of population for fear that we would leave somebody out. So Mike and I sat down, came up with an inclusion statement that the board could consider, and then I took it back out to show the same citizens that said we didn't need one, and they found that inclusion statement that we came up with was acceptable. A committee was formed. I had suggested at the committee meeting that flatlanders and bald people were discriminated against and left out groups, and I was told that that's not genuine, it was mocking, and that they are doing these individuals should not be included unless they can prove they are historically and financially and systemically marginalized. I thought that if an individual cannot prove they fall under that category, are we saying it's acceptable to discriminate against these people? Since then, I've been thinking about other individuals that are not represented in the inclusion statement, such as individuals with tattoos, body piercings, non-traditional hair color, vegetarians, possibly the way some people may dress or talk. Their discrimination should not be considered silliness or any less acceptable than discrimination for the historically marginalized populations. The committee that was formed could not agree on one particular statement, and because of that, the committee has submitted 4 different inclusion statements to the board. And I figure, based on Dave Potter's original statement, I say, why would anyone want an inclusion statement that excludes somebody? In my opinion, the statement that Mike Klopson and I came up with is the only one that can be considered 100% inclusive. So I'd like to make a motion that the board adopt and sign the inclusion statement that Mike and I composed, with the understanding that the words "all people" stands for everybody.
All right, there's a motion made, is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, for discussion. Would you like to add anything to, given that you were at that meeting as well?
No, other than I think Art covered it pretty well, other than we had about a 90-minute discussion. We could not reach a consensus amongst the 8 of us that were here. And to continue going forward at this point, I could really see no need to do it. I would go along with Art's adoption of option 2, which he just stated, and I would leave it at that.
I don't think it's listed as statement.
It's actually option 1.
Yeah.
I was gonna mention that.
I got it as 2 for some reason.
Option 2 has the language that Art had suggested at our first meeting on this issue. And
Well, if you have a copy of the one that I'm talking about, if you could read it, Mike, that might be a little helpful.
More clear.
The town of Clarendon formally condemns discrimination in all of its forms and welcomes all people who want to live and work and add richness to our town. Clarendon calls upon all residents to denounce prejudice, to openly acknowledge and address our own implicit bias, and welcome and celebrate all people, and continue to work together to ensure every individual can live freely, equitably, and express their opinions. Adopted by the Clarendon Select Board, if we vote to adopt. Robbie wasn't here this afternoon, or isn't here because he has a school board thing with the school that he teaches, and it's a budget. So I assume, he called me to let me know that he's sorry that he couldn't be here, but he did print out a statement, and it's right here, and goes along with, what Art had just said. I think that, for the record, if anybody wants to see it here, before we go to vote on the motion, I just want to state that there is a possibility that if folks aren't happy with what we have just read, that you have options still. You can petition the town to put that on a ballot, and I think it wouldn't be till March though, am I correct, Gloria? So that is the option. Now, does anybody have any comments or questions before we call the vote?
I think a comment I just want to make is I want to thank everybody who participated in this hour and a half at one point, hour meeting at another point, number of phone calls. I want to acknowledge all of the phone calls that people took, letters that people wrote. I think it's really important, and I appreciate so much that people were engaged.
I do too. I think it's good that as citizens you can approach other citizens, i.e. the select board, and state your opinions, and it's on public record because of PEG TV, and I think that that really says something to people in town, that we try to acknowledge that you have an opinion and the board has an opinion, and we can respect each other for those opinions. Yes?
Can I just ask, Art, who were the people that you brought this to?
Well, they're mostly friends of mine, I'll admit that, but, I was available to anybody that wanted to see it, and, I know there was, if you want me to list names.
No, I just wanted to know if any of them had any, marginalized groups in their families, or if they had any concerns.
Well, I personally have a gay cousin in my family, and I know, I'm from Connecticut, I know a lot of people of color, so, yeah, I understand your historically marginalized groups, but this is supposed to be, from what I gather, this is supposed to be a welcoming statement for people to come into town. And I don't think we want to just welcome only marginalized groups. We want to welcome everybody. So I don't see why we can't say all people.
No, I was just asking who you presented it to. And just hoping that all means all.
All means,
That
I made sure that was in my motion.
But everyone's gonna take this to heart and welcome all.
Yes,
And not just
absolutely.
like, all but, maybe not you.
Oh, no. Absolutely everybody, everyone is welcome to Clarendon. Everybody.
Yes, do you have a?
Yes, I just was curious about the other statements that were presented, what the language in those were that was not, I don't know all the other statements that were put forward, that we're voting on one to be accepted. I just wanted to know what the language might have been in two that was another option, or the third that was another option. I just wanted to know what the language was, please.
I can read them if you want to take.
Thank you, that would be great.
The town of Clarendon formally condemns discrimination in all of its forms and welcomes all people, including historically marginalized populations, who want to live and work and add richness to our town. Clarendon calls upon all residents to denounce prejudice, to openly acknowledge and address our own implicit bias, and welcome and celebrate all people, and continue to work together to ensure every individual can live freely, equitably, and express their opinions. So the word marginalized was added to that. That is the difference there. The town of Clarendon condemns racism and welcomes all persons regardless of race, color, religion, national origin, sex, sexual orientation, gender, identity, or expression, age, or disability, and wants everyone to feel safe and welcome in our community. As a town, we formally condemn discrimination in all its forms, commit to fair and equal treatment of everyone in our community, and will strive to ensure all actions, policies, and operation procedures reflect this commitment. The town of Clarendon is and will continue to be a place where individuals can live freely and express their opinions.
Thank you.
And the last one, the town of Clarendon formally condemns discrimination in all of its forms and welcomes all people and is inclusive, but not limited to, all persons of race, color, religion, national origin, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, age or disability who want to live and work and add richness to our town. Excuse me. Clarendon calls upon all residents to denounce prejudice, to openly acknowledge and address our own implicit bias, and welcome and celebrate all people, and continue to work together to ensure every individual can live freely, equitably, and express their opinions.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I do have one follow-up question, if that would be all right.
Yeah.
So the first one I get, and I totally support the all. The second one, and I get totally why the third and the fourth, they're a bit lengthy, and it's not necessary if you just include that one statement, you know, the marginalized community. I'm just curious if that one would be acceptable to the board, or if it would be. I'm just curious.
Yeah.
It's just that small little phrase.
Yes.
Mike, I think that small little phrase causes contradiction for everybody else in this town. When we say all, we include all. We're sitting here in a meeting where we all talk freely. We don't have this statement at hand. We've never had a problem doing that. I mean, this is like a attempt at futility here. I say we adopt it with all, and includes all, every one of us in this room. It always has. And I just don't think we need to go off the beaten path.
In response.
Hold on.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, I can.
Marge, go ahead.
I would say there's a motion on the floor, and
Yes.
we've really been through 3-4 meetings of all this conversation. I think we've had enough. I would like to see the board vote.
I just was curious. Thank you.
Okay. Is there any other comments?
I would like to just say a couple of things. You know, I've been through this through the whole, since
Yes.
the beginning, and I think that with the committee, I think it was very unfortunate that we weren't able to come to some kind of a consensus. And I think that to us, it's loud and clear that there's a real reluctance, a real fear almost, or certainly a hesitation about some groups of marginalized people and naming them. And I can't figure that one out, I guess, but, you know, not naming all the lists, I think that's one thing, but to at least put the words marginalized groups, I think would be sort of a come to the middle ground here. But I think by not saying something about these marginalized individuals, I think you're leaving something out. You know, that's not a welcoming statement unless you put something in there referencing that. It doesn't have to be exhaustive, but it should be something.
I think, I know, speak for myself, not the whole board. When I've been on the board long enough to know that when we've done things in town, we've had to every so many years correct policies and things like this because we left something out when we initially did it. By just using the term all, that means we don't have to review this or reinvent the wheel again down the road 2 or 3 years from now. We don't have to add groups. Even in my opinion, the term marginalized is a history kind of a word, reference. So if we add that, then there, you know, maybe just as an example, 10 years ago, people with tattoos, we didn't care, but now all of a sudden, oh, this guy's moving into town, he's got all these tattoos, you know, by just saying all, he falls under what our intentions are in this town to accept all people.
Well, I didn't have a problem with adding the marginalized groups in there, that comment. But when it was brought up at a meeting, it was you folks that said no. It wasn't us. We said we would go for it. It was brought up by Mr. Peterson back there, and we said, yeah, we could do that. And you were the ones that said no.
Well, I think when that was brought up, we said that we would not want to accept that without further discussion, but we would say no.
Right, we weren't saying no, we just wanted a further discussion, which we've had, so.
And that's what brings us to
He had something to say.
And to me, well, it makes sense to have everything listed out. It's like a code. It makes everything explicit and clear. Having all those actually listed out makes it clear to everybody that that's what you mean.
Should we add people with tattoo, people with body piercings?
Well, that's their
It's
choice.
not the same
It's not
category.
that they're, like, so for instance, say somebody that's black. They have been, or somebody that's gay, they have not been accepted into a job or not have been able to get a job because they are gay or
So are
black.
people with tattoos. We've already discussed all this. I don't want to go through it again. That's not why we're here.
That's a choice.
It's their choice.
That's a different thing.
But they're still discriminated against, even if it's their choice. Is it right? Is it right that they're discriminated? Discrimination is not right for any. And like I said, this is supposed to be a welcoming statement. I welcome everybody. 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 All people.
You have a question?
Well, my issue with the marginalized question, you know, in general, it's not a defined statement. Maybe you could say it includes this group, this group, this group, and this group. But, you know, that's something that's constantly changing. You know, you just look at like the LGBTQ designations. I mean, at one point in time it was LGB, then it was LGBTQ, and then it was LGBTQ plus, and then I forget how many other letters have been added on to that in recent, you know, every time I look at that acronym, I have to go look it up to see what the new letters added in mean. So, you know, it's always dangerous when you put something into a legislation or a statement or a motion that's not defined. And that's, you know, it's kind of open-ended.
Mm-hmm.
It's very open-ended. My other thing would be, you know, you were in the service too, and you know, when you're in the service, you get judged by what you do. You don't get judged by, you know, you don't look to see what color the guy is covering your back. You don't care. You just care that he's covering your back and doing his job, and you're doing your job to cover his back.
Everybody please red.
Yeah, and
But that's another.
I would like to see us as a group, as a people, as a country, start to get back to that.
Well, during the Second World War, when the blacks fought in the Second World War, they couldn't even sleep in the same barracks, for God's sake.
That's past history. That's
Yeah.
not today.
Well, that's why
That's
we're
what
saying,
75
that's
years
why
ago.
we're saying historically marginalized people, because historically, throughout history, the people that we're referring to have been marginalized.
Are we still there, or have we moved on?
We're still there.
Do we need to go back? Do we need to go back to World War II?
What just happened in Buffalo?
Or can we look to better things?
Well, it's beyond World War II. It has, now I am a Vietnam veteran, combat veteran in Vietnam.
You guys were discriminated against too when you came back, weren't you?
Yes, we were.
Well, I know all about
Oh,
that.
baby killers and all this other
I
stuff.
know
But
all
I'm talking
about
about the brothers in arms thing. We all protected each other. And it wasn't a Civil War kind of thing. It was not a pre-Civil War attitude. It was, Jesus, help me out here. You know, my buddy. And even when we got back from Vietnam, the people who experienced that combat, we were still brothers. All of us were. And I think the people who are trying to, once again, divide this nation, here we are, all sitting in here, and we are trying to heal that. We don't want that to go. And I think by using the term all, for me, that's what I experienced, all. And, you know, I don't want to start bringing tears to the eyes, but I think of all my friends who died then. And I can remember one fellow from from Brooklyn, New York, sitting there holding his guts in his hand and crying, talking about his mom. And we medevaced him. Probably 15 years later, I'm watching TV, Clarendon here, and we thought he died. He didn't. He became a police detective down in New York City, and he wrote a book about Vietnam. So, for me, welcoming all, that's how I feel. And to even marginalize or write different groups, I can't do that. I can't do that. I don't want to speak for the other board members.
I think it's wonderful that you associate all that way, but there are an awful lot of people who do not look at it the same way as you and I do.
Well, that's their problem. That's not our problem. That's their problem. They have a problem with it. It's not our problem.
It's it.
And I'm saying all.
That's the problem right there, Art, because
I can't change their mind.
Right, but it's not just their problem. It's your problem. It's Mike's problem. It's my problem. It's the community's problem when people think that way. So if you can add to the belief that everyone, even marginalized people, are not discriminated against, then I think that helps. I think when you say that it's somebody else's problem, you're ignoring the situation at hand.
Well, I'm just saying I don't have to change the meaning of the word all. If somebody else changes the meaning of the word all, no matter what we put on this paper, they are not going to be happy with the marginalized groups that you're talking about, because that's the way they think.
By just putting the word all, though, we as a town can move forward, and if somebody is causing trouble in any one of our rural neighborhoods, and it comes back to the select board, say, no, you can't do that here. We don't accept those things. You change, move out, whatever, if you don't like it. But we like whoever is in our town who wants to be a citizen of our town, regardless of all these, I don't want to hear going this list, regardless of their beliefs, I accept this, right? That's as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I hope that if that's what everyone decides on tonight, that that, the board will follow through on that kind of thinking rather than not, so.
You have my word on it, as far as I'm concerned. The other select board members can weigh in on that particular comment, but you have my word on that.
I will do everything in my power that I'm capable of doing. The select board doesn't have much power, but to keep discrimination from happening. I mean, I want people to move into Clarendon. I like people. I have no problem with all people. And I don't want somebody to say, I can't live here because they're treated badly. That's not something that I'm looking for.
The thing is, you can't legislate an attitude. You can't legislate it in, you can't legislate it out. It is what it is. All you can do is when you see a wrong attitude, as an individual, take a stand.
And that's why,
Everything else is just words.
that's why all these people are in here tonight. They want to let the public know that our town accepts people. Come in, live here, be my neighbor. That's, I don't know.
Mr. Chairman, we have a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. We've had quite a lot of discussion. I think it's time to bring it to a vote.
Move the motion.
So moved.
All right. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? All right. So I would ask for a motion for the select board to sign this option 1. You want me to read it again?
Please.
Okay. Get on some glasses here. Town of Clarendon formally condemns discrimination in all of its forms and welcomes all people who want to live and work and add richness to our town. Clarendon calls upon all residents to denounce prejudice, to openly acknowledge and address our own implicit bias, and welcome and celebrate all people, and continue to work together to ensure every individual can live freely, equitably, and express their opinions.
Mike, my motion included adopting and signing, so we don't need another motion.
Okay, I thought you didn't do that, but, and the motion passes.
Whoop, whoop.
We're gonna take some time to sign this.
Could I just say something before we wrap up and get out of here relative to this?
Yes.
First of all, thank you for this ongoing discussion about inclusion, starting way back in early March and bringing it to a conclusion tonight. And I believe that your signing this here tonight means it's the 50th community in the state to adopt this declaration. So once again,
50 is a wonderful place to be.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys for making Clarendon what it is.
Yes. Thank you. I personally want to thank you. It's a moving thing for me. I don't know. Maybe people don't expect that from me, but it is, and I appreciate it. Thank you very
I'm
much.
happy based on your word, Mike, so.
I appreciate the folks that were on that committee, and
And you all still have my email and my phone number? Call me.
My number's in the book. I don't have email, but it's in the book.
It's on the website too.
All right, that's, and,
Speaking of which, will that end up there?
Will.
yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no.
Post it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good clerk. All right, and thank you very much, you guys. We're gonna move right along now.
Thank you.
So if you wanna stay, if anybody wants to get copies of this, just talk with Katie and you can get signed copies. Good night.
Have a sparkling evening.
All right, Kingsley Bridge stream gauge.
So you guys had tabled this discussion at the last meeting, to let time pass for the Stone Environmental to meet with V-Trans. They did meet, and Stone Environmental is gonna put this stream gauge, they're gonna attach it to bedrock on the river. And they've already talked to the landowner, so there's nothing really you need to approve anymore. So, just giving you an update on that.
Okay,
Perfect.
good.
Okay.
Sergeant Cross, if you have a moment, could you come down here and talk to us about the animal control ordinance, please?
I will try to give some guidance.
Okay.
Or opinions.
You want my seat?
Yeah.
Was that?
Want my seat?
There you go. There, now I can hear. Did we say anything yet?
Huh?
So just for everyone else that's here, so we've had some ongoing animal issues that are not covered by the current ordinance within town, which limits my ability to take any enforcement action at this point. This has been discussed previously, and some options were presented to the board, which my understanding in speaking with Mr. Klopchin is there was some issues once it was sent up for review by Vermont League of City and Towns and some of the attorneys. They were concerned with some of the language in there and how it could be applied. So they declined to adopt any of those options that were given before. After speaking with Mr. Klopchin, he asked me to look into seeing if there's some amendments or things like that that we might be able to put in there. So I did some statutory searches through some of the existing statutes, just to try and use language that obviously already has some judicial review. It's already in state statute, so it's all already essentially state law language, which would limit any, issues here. I know one of the big ones that we had referenced before, and I provided in the copies as well, is the Proctor Ordinance, just because it is a very inclusive ordinance. So one of the options in there is, if you look at section 3, subsection B, where it defines domestic animals.
I gave Mike a copy of it.
Yes, it says, may I read that?
Absolutely.
Section B says domestic animal means cattle, sheep, goats, equines, deer, American bison, swine, poultry, pheasant, partridge, I can't pronounce that word, quail, birds, ferrets, camelids,
Camelids, which would be
yeah,
camels or
ostriches, rheas and emus and stuff like that, and water buffalo. The term shall include culture, fish propagated by commercial fish farms.
How about cats and dogs?
Well, there's domestic pet and there's domestic animal.
Oh, gotcha.
So pets are your cats, dogs, wolf hybrids, things of that nature.
Okay.
Proctor does define out what a domestic animal is, which is included within their ordinance.
Okay.
So one option would simply be, and that was kind of a guideline that we had discussed previously that they were kind of looking at. So one option, obviously, there is to just simply adopt your definition of a domestic animal, whether you just wish that to, however the town chose to define that would limit and restrict that. Within that, a couple of the other options, I was provided within the Title 13, which is cruelty to animals. It does have definitions in there. The definition number 11 is livestock, which means cattle, bison, horses, sheep, goats, swine, certimid, ratatates, and camelids, which is essentially your ostriches, your deer hybrids, your moose, things like that. So a simple solution on that would be referencing statutory definition in one of the other cruelty to animals subchapter 51B, the scope. It simply says this subchapter shall not apply to, and it has definitions, so you could simply add in there, this subchapter shall not apply to livestock as defined as Title 13 BSA 351, which is that that one there that states it out, which is, I believe, the primary areas which are, the concerns, which was sheep, cattle, things like that. There was concerns that this ordinance could be applied towards the ranchers and farmers and could negatively impact their ability. So by utilizing the state definition of livestock within the animal to cruelties and accepting that definition, that would remove any application towards cattle, sheep, any of those kind of things. And then I also pulled a section out of Title VI, which is the agriculture. The section I pulled from is exemptions from licenses for agricultural businesses and auctions. So I kind of took that and adapted, and underneath it, I just kind of typed up a sample, which is essentially the provisions of this ordinance shall not apply to a farmer performing duties within the regular operation of his or her farm and performed in accordance with accepted practices of agricultural business. So simply, if you put that in as same thing in a scope of or an exception thereto, the only thing with that one is it is a little bit more vague, and I'll be honest, I do pretty good as a redneck. I am not a farmer, so I may not know as the enforcing agency what is the best agricultural. So to that, I may have to lean on things such as the members of the board, which may involve hearings and things like that, as opposed to a clear definition with some of those other state listed definitions. It either fits or it doesn't, and I can enforce or I can't enforce, so it makes it very clear cut. With something like this, it may be an issue that has to come in front of the board and have the board decide, is this within the standard scope of agriculture or is it not? You know, because I know, obviously a farmer crossing cattle across the road from one field to another, that's standard, so that wouldn't qualify as an animal at large because it's within the standard business. We all know that from time to time, a cow will bust a fence, get out once in a while. That's not standard practice, but if they get it back in and they fix the fence, that is. If they have the same issue with the same location 2, 3, 4, 5 times, is that a neglect issue? Is that standard? So it really kind of puts some gray area into how that's applied, which would then come back to the board to make that decision on whether or not they felt that it applied to that situation. So there are examples of all of those provided. If there are any other questions or anything, feel free. But from looking through existing statutory languages, those were kind of some of the best options to modify some of the examples that we discussed previously.
And the legal person in town that looks after animal control, what would you suggest? I hate to ask you this, but you know the legal side of things.
To be honest, having the legal reference such as to, putting in there that, like the definition out of Title 13, animal control, animal cruelty, it applies to this genre that we're looking into. The state has already defined it out. It's fairly clear, and it exempts, pretty much the majority of the livestock that are engaged in the town of Clarendon. So having that language already set in state statute, that helps and makes it a little easier to enforce because it's already been legislatively reviewed and everything else, and you're just referencing to what the state has decided that term is.
So if we included that in our animal ordinance, my question would be, if this horse gets out, which it does continually, and it's on other folks' property, and we called you folks up, how would you handle that then?
If we were to apply that definition within the horses are not included in that livestock definition, so therefore it's essentially the same thing as if your dog kept getting out and running onto your neighbor's property.
Can you read the definition of that again? Because didn't it mention equine?
I think it does mention horses.
And equine, that is horses, remember, is a horse family.
In the livestock definition of, so this is Title 13, VSA 351, which is animals out of the criminal statutes. Subsection 11, definition of livestock means cattle. It does. Cattle, bison, I'm staying corrected, I missed it before. Horses, sheep, goats, swine, serpents, ratatites, and camelids. So thank you, because I missed that. Nope, you're good. I missed that the first time I was reading quick in the dark. So, you know, at that, actually, that wouldn't apply with the horses in there. So, you know, that would maybe be the second option of the definition of, you know, how you guys choose to define what a domestic animal is. And that's the same thing. If in the ordinance you define it as, you know, a domestic animal is equine, you know, and you guys can choose what to put within there, and then you can exempt the livestock animals such as cattle, things like that. And that's the options that are up to you guys that I really can't advise you on. Okay. It really comes down to what you're trying to do with the ordinance, you know, limit any impact on the ranchers and the farmers and things like that, while still being able to address issues with other large domestic animals, because right now, none of them are covered under the ordinance.
Is there any way that rather than blame it on whatever the animal is, if it's destroying somebody else's property, is there a way that our ordinance, which is established already, trespassing or something like this, can that?
People can sue. If your property's getting destroyed by the neighbor's horse, you take the neighbor to court and you say, you're gonna fix my property. If you do it enough times, then that person's either gonna keep its horse in or it's gonna go broke. But that's basically, I mean, it's a civil thing.
The issue is, it is civil at this point. We can't do anything under the statutes, like criminally, for damaging a property, because there has to be intent. So unless the animals were intentionally let out with the purpose of damaging a neighbor's property or something like that, it wouldn't fall within those. The only other option, and I'm hoping we don't ever get there, would be something to the nature of like this, where we've had repeat instances, the animal's getting out, there's a little bit of neglect there because the same issue repeatedly, and then God forbid, I reference like in Killington, car coming down the road smacks a horse at 10 o'clock at night. Now it could fall within the reckless endangerment criminal statutes, because there's a repeat pattern of behavior that was not corrected that led up to that situation. Or if somebody swerves to avoid the horse in the middle of the road and goes into the, you know, something along that there's going to need to be an overact of. It's really difficult to do of, well, it was in the road, but there was no cars around, and it could have, that's a very gray area within that statute, and it really does not fit within that realm until something happens, unfortunately. And that's, you know, as you and I have discussed, that's kind of what I'd like to avoid by being able to have an intermediate thing of, you know, I can talk to them, there's a civil option, and then there's where they can have a civil penalty by issuing a ticket throughout the ordinance before it gets to that criminal one.
I think, I don't know what the other board members' thoughts are on this, but for me, a member, I think that we should have a meeting on ordinances. There's other ordinances in town that have to be upgraded, and we should check with leagues and a couple of these other folks to see, to your point, you know, legally where we can, what the language would be to do this. I don't know. Art, do you want to weigh in on that a little?
And like I told these folks over here, the select board has damn little power.
Yes.
We got no authority to do anything.
But we do have an authority to set policy or
statutes. But you know, unless you can convince me that this woman is doing it on purpose.
Yeah, but you can't go on neglect.
Proving neglect is a problem. You're not there. She's not actually neglecting the animal. The animal is fed and it's well taken care of. She's neglecting her fence. Okay, so what do? Confiscate her fence? You know, if she's neglecting the animal and it's starving, yes, you can confiscate the animal, but it's the fence thing. The option is the neighbors have got to sue her. Take her to court and say, look, you got to pay for this stuff.
What do you think, Bob?
Well, I kinda agree with Art here, you know, if somebody aren't keeping their fences up and letting the animals run. I've lived here in the farm country, well, 60 years right here in North Clarendon. Farms all the way around me. Farmers kept their fences up. They didn't depend on the select board to take care of their problems when they happened. You know, and I don't think we should be. I think what we need, more so rather than more statutes, is more common sense on part of the animal owners.
Well, Cash and I talked to her a couple times, and I would argue the common sense part. But anyway, Cash, you have an opinion.
Better not comment on it.
Yes,
With this individual.
Well, when we talk to farmers, they're telling us now that if you have cattle, you gotta have 5 strands, the state requires 5 strands of wire. So wouldn't you have to have quite a few for a horse?
I don't see where the state requires that.
The state now says, it may be just long roadways, I don't know. But farmers are telling us that that's what the state requires of cattle.
They're promoting the portable electric fence.
They may be, but that's what we've heard. They gotta have 5 strands of wire now.
And if an animal gets out over and over and over, there's a good chance there's a reason for it. Because it's neglect of feed.
We did have somebody that got killed probably 10, 15 years ago from a horse. It was the guy that was the alcohol guy. What was his name? Giotti. He ran into a horse at 2 in the morning that had gotten loose.
Well, look what happened to Mosier.
Yeah.
Yeah, over there.
So, I mean, if this woman is, she's opening herself up to some serious problems if this horse kills somebody or hurts somebody.
Well, it's destruction of property too. I wonder how that folks have come down to the select board, called, visited, stopped in, and whatever term you want to use. And we then asked, and you guys are in town, to go just give her a little heads up. So I think for the time being, do you have issues with us going to, you know, as a sheriff, to take the time to go visit her?
I can say I have several times already.
Yes.
I have had several conversations. I have no issue having a conversation again. To be perfectly honest, I do not have high hopes of a different outcome.
No.
But I am more than willing to go down there and have that conversation.
So that being said, it's a waste of time to do that. I agree with Art. The people, landowners involved, they need to get on the bandwagon and say, look, this is enough. Call the attorneys.
Yeah. It doesn't cost much to file a small claims court and do it. Let all the neighbors do it more than one time.
Yeah.
That's the answer.
I'm sure they all get together, have one attorney address this issue in the letter to this woman. It would get my attention.
You haven't dealt with this.
You don't have to go to the small claim file. Just have the attorney sit there and say, this is your warning. This is what's coming next.
You haven't.
It would get my attention.
That conversation has been had.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
in a
well, I didn't agree with maybe what Cash said earlier, or common sense or whatever. Just not.
Right.
There's no common sense.
That's too bad.
No, not a bit.
All right, I think that we'll think about this a little bit. I want to get leagues.
Nope, absolutely. Like I said, I wanted to offer some possible solutions that utilize some current statutory language and, you know, what the options are kind of up to you guys. So, you know, nothing up to a full rewrite. It's really up to what you guys feel is appropriate for your town.
All right, well, we'll work on it. I appreciate you coming down here.
Are you on the
right
clock?
along?
Yes. Well, yes, no, it's my day off, but yes, I'll.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Mike, you want to throw me one of them mints down there?
I'll do 2 in case you miss it. All right, under new business, Pope burial, Spafford Cemetery.
So Tammy Dominguez was in here and she just made us aware that Ronald Pope will be buried at the Spafford Cemetery on May 31st. So I just wanted, like, best practice to have a motion that you guys approve that. She has all the paperwork in order. And it's, a cremation.
Where is that paperwork in there?
I have the certificate of, like, crematory, but, there'll be paperwork filed at the town clerk's office after the burial.
Because it was a cremation, you don't need to sign off on anything because there is no casket, so there's no burial transit permit required.
Okay.
So what do we have to do? Just say, go for it? Okay. I make a motion that she goes for it.
I'll second that. Let's go.
The stone's already in place.
Yeah. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of go for it, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed?
So Kevin Peck is here and he has, some information on the Smith Pratt Button Cemetery.
Right.
Go for it.
Okay,
I don't
so,
know if the board is aware of the issue yet.
pardon?
I don't know if the board is aware of the,
Well, apparently not. It's not on the agenda.
yeah.
Which is not anybody's fault. Anyways, during the process for the Pope burial, another issue came up. A number of years ago, Zachary Lee Pratt approached the town about being buried in the Button Cemetery. Back in 2017, he was told, he claims, or he was a descendant of the Pratts. And so he was told he'd have to, because it's a private owned cemetery, he was told to approach them. And in the course of that discussion back in 2018, Lori Phillips, the present owner of the Button Cemetery, a letter was written from Heather Kent regarding ownership of the cemetery, the town's maintaining a property that they don't own, and would she be willing to discuss transferring ownership to the town. And I don't know what happened to that discussion between now and then. But apparently last week, Zachary Pratt came back in here, asked once again to be buried, to have a plot in the Button Cemetery. And I don't know what happened to the family, ignored him, or so he's looking for the town to put him in there. But so I contacted Lori Phillips, and I was finally able to get in touch with her today regarding, first of all, Zachary wanting, and that he's been instructed to contact her. But also I addressed the letter back in 2018 about deeding the cemetery to the town. The town presently pays for the maintenance and upkeep of property as it stated in the 2018 letter that the town does not own. And she's willing to entertain that, enter into discussion. Her one concern is in her deed, when she bought the property, which included the cemetery, was in the deed, she states that only descendants of the Pratts can be buried in that cemetery, and she would like to see that continued. So I don't know where or who follows up on that now, but she's willing to entertain, she's paying taxes on property she cannot use. The town's not gaining a piece of property that they can develop, but the town now will maintain a piece of property that it owns. So she doesn't know what happened after the 2018 letter that came from the town to her asking if she'd be amenable to that discussion. She never heard anything further, but now she's more than willing to enter into discussion with deeding that cemetery to the town.
Do you recall the conversation we had on that?
How did the town get involved with maintenance if they didn't own the property in the beginning?
That's something we don't know either, right?
Yeah.
Right, so typically what happens with that is if a group of folks get together and petition the town to take over the maintenance of a cemetery, by law you legally have to. So somewhere along the line, we only, God only knows when, the town must have been petitioned to take over the maintenance for that cemetery. Because it has been for a very long time. We found letters from like the 70s regarding and referencing the town's maintenance of that cemetery. So,
As long as I've been on a board, 32 years, I mean, Bob can back this up, and we came on at the same time. We've always maintained that. Now, I don't know, I was not aware that that was not town cemetery, because I would have questioned it back then.
the letter that was written, that is, a copy of that letter is in the file, was sent by, as Kevin stated, was sent by Heather to Lori on behalf of the board. And it expressly says that while you guys have no authority to approve or deny someone to be buried there, and that falls with her because it's in her deed that she owns it, that the board is concerned about the liability of having to maintain it with not owning it. So the letter was at the direction of the board to contact Lori.
When was that?
2018.
February 2nd.
I don't remember that.
I don't recall it, but,
And I'm sure it was,
we've always maintained it.
I'm sure that letter was directed because of, and as a side note to this gentleman coming in requesting to be buried in that cemetery. So then work got done to see, okay, well, you know, we don't have any maps for that cemetery, so we don't know if there's any plots open. And honestly, it's been easier, I think, that anybody having to do with any of the town managed cemeteries, we don't have a lot of information on them. We don't have these maps for them. So it quite frankly has been easier to say these cemeteries are full. But then when you do the research and find out, oh, the town does not own the cemetery, the next step, since we maintain it anyways, would then be to pursue or talking to Lori about deeding over that
I
cemetery.
wonder if the thinking at the time was the fact that we'd been maintaining it for X amount of years, so we would still maintain it.
Yep.
Now, you're talking maintenance, are you talking just mowing the lawn, or are you talking the headstones and everything?
Everything to do, every stones, Cash and I were in there last spring,
We're taking care of all that
moving
now.
the tree, trimming trees, you know, the stones. The initial letter, written, talked about what included the town, does for maintenance and, you know.
So she's,
Also, let me just interject there too. When the town is petitioned to take over and maintain a cemetery, it's not just exclusively for the lawn.
That's what I was asking, I
Or
didn't
the
know.
landscaping.
Yeah.
It's everything.
Okay, I just didn't know what you were talking about when you
Yeah.
said maintenance.
So we're already technically responsible for that anyways.
So if we took it over,
The only
The only
change is
thing
that
that-
it would now be owned by the town.
and it would add a burden to us as far as allowing somebody to be buried in there. We'll take that burden away from the current owner.
Also lose tax benefit, right? Didn't she say she's paying taxes on it currently? Does she pay taxes on it now?
I imagine it's included in her, the whole property,
Yeah.
this quarter, half acre of land. You know, it's not very big.
Marge, did you
Well, she was the town clerk, Mary Pratt was on that prop. She made, way back when she was, years and years ago, had the town maintain it.
Back to the early 70s.
Yeah.
At her house.
Yep.
At that house right, you know, it's gone now, but, or Lori's.
This guy's not ready to be buried yet, but he wants to.
No.
Give him a plot.
He's very much so alive.
So is it my
I need to
understanding
get in
that
there.
Lori's interested in the town taking over the ownership of the property with exclusion in there that it still has to be a Pratt descendant?
That's what, and
the town broached the subject with her 3+ years ago, 4 years ago, February of 2018. It was the town, attorney, William Bloomer, who wrote the letter. And then she never heard anything further about it. So when I addressed it again today, she's willing to enter, discuss that. Her only concern is her deed states only Pratt descendants can be buried there, and she wants to see that carried over.
Okay.
Whatever, warranty deed, quick deed, whatever,
I mean, that I certainly understand, but I think she would also need to provide us with, provide the town with maps as to burial plots and what is open and what is not.
I was gonna say, is there more
Otherwise, we have
spaces
no
available?
idea.
Well,
I would think so.
well, I was in there last week, and I drove in, of course, it's a very narrow entrance. You drove in, and of course, I had the window down my vehicle, and just as I was going through that gate, you just heard, and I know it's been really wet, but you heard you're on wet. It was wet ground. And it was wet from the fence until it starts kind of like going up the hill where we worked last spring, that last lot, stone. So I don't know if you can put anybody in there. I don't know what the requirements for ground, but it's very soggy ground that lowers between the stone wall and the actual start of the climb of the hill of the cemetery.
Now, Bill Bloomer did do some investigating on that before he answered our letter. Do you have a copy of that letter?
I've got the letter right here.
What does it say? Can you read it?
Okay. Dear Heather, I don't believe I gave you a complete written response to your questions relating to the Button Smith Cemetery, also known as the Smith Button Pratt Cemetery. Chapter 121, Title 18 of the Vermont statutes annotated includes provisions for cemeteries. In subchapter 2, the requirements for town cemeteries are set forth. In order for a cemetery to be considered a town cemetery, there must be a recorded plat with all of the sections, lots, driveways, etc. That plat would have to be recorded in the Clarendon land records. No lot should be sold by the town all of the cemetery unless there is a plat on record in the town clerk's office. Based upon your emails, it was my understanding that no one was able to locate a deed conveying the cemetery to the town. I understand that no plat for the cemetery exists in the Clarendon town land records. Under those circumstances, I would recommend that the town take the position that the Button Smith Cemetery is not a town cemetery. If that is the town's decision, that should be communicated to whomever is managing or otherwise involved with the cemetery. I do not believe that the town is prohibited from maintaining a cemetery that it does not own, keeping and repair suitable grounds and other conveniences for burying the dead. If the select board wishes to continue to maintain the cemetery, there should be probably a written agreement with whomever is managing the cemetery, which should clearly state that the town does not consider the Button Smith Cemetery to be a town parcel. If there are persons who are actively managing a cemetery, they should consider forming a cemetery association as described in Title 18. In the alternative, they could merge the cemetery with the existing association. I hope that this is responsive to the questions that you raised, but if not, I would be glad to discuss it further with you, and I read the wrong letter.
But you read it really well.
You have the right one? Okay. This is one from Heather Kent. This past cemetery, the Clarendon Board of Selectmen received a request for burial in the Smith Button Pratt Cemetery located on Route 7B South. This is written October 3rd, 2017. Burial requests are not a common occurrence, and so the board researched the cemetery to discover if any deeded plots were on record. No plots were found, but it was found that the cemetery itself is owned by you as recorded in your deed. Allowances for the families to be buried there were also listed in your deed, and so the board returned the request over to the requisite family. The town of Clarendon has for years maintained the cemetery. This maintenance includes mowing, weeding, brush cutting, stone, and fence repair. The fact that town is maintaining a cemetery that does not own brings some concerns to the select board. Cost of maintenance being one of them, but also liability if someone was to be hurt in the presence of the town maintaining work on a property that does not belong to the town. The select board would like to discuss with you if you're willing to deed the cemetery over to the town. This will solve any ambiguity in the future as to rights to the cemetery as well as any concerns over the maintenance. This will of course only occur if you were fully in agreement before any process was started. The board looks forward to hearing from you. Please do not hesitate to contact me with any questions or concerns you may have. And apparently that's where it all ended.
We get a copy.
Yeah, I have a copy here. I can.
Okay, good.
Well, according to Bloomer's letter, does she have what we would require in order to take it over? A
And
plot
my
plan?
understanding, there's nothing as far as,
Well, then we can't take it over. Because the statute that Bloomer said, you gotta have
The whole
certain
map.
things.
Gotta have the plat and
And
everything.
if she doesn't have it to give us, then we can't take it over. That's what I'm,
right. So I don't know what the town has on any of this.
Well, the next thing would be then we'll get back to her and say that as stated as our legal advisor, Bill Bloomer, you have to provide, as we just discussed, you know, your deeds and all this kind of stuff. If you can't do that, town can't consider taking the thing over.
Right.
So I think that's our next best thing. Make a copy of that, highlight the standards that he is suggesting, and then if she wants to get back to us, or if she wants to work on, you know, going into the records and finding out, you know, further, somewhere there's gotta be, yeah, Marge.
I think my brother has buried somebody in that cemetery, and sometimes, I don't know, like in Chip and Hook and stuff, sometimes there were maps that he got. So Bob knows we're gonna have a meeting June 7th.
Yeah.
And we may, you know, ask, because they've got all the books here now.
Yeah.
And we need to go through it and see if we have any local maps of any of the cemeteries that might help out.
Yeah. We see Cecil might have had, but I don't know really. I'd want to see that
I know
stuff
he had
before
some
I.
from Chip and Hook, because Dave Potter gave them to him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, he might have there. I don't know down there.
I don't know, I know they buried people there in
Yeah.
the past, so.
Dave Miller had, right, he used to live over there in the, Route 7B. Isn't it Dave Miller that lived there?
The name sounds familiar.
But he had pictures of the town and all this kind of stuff. And he said his daughter, but she wasn't his daughter, was supposed to turn all that over. But all the cemeteries, he had maps of that. And that, cause I seen it, you know, with my own, it didn't bring to mind any issues. I was more interested in pictures showing where, old 7B old Route 7 used to go there, and there was no new Route 7 and all this kind of stuff. But I was interested because the CV had the power lines still on the old road sites. And we just walked over by where the bridge used to be, and that pavement is still there. They, you know, but I think in this case, why don't we do that? Why don't we coordinate that with cemetery committee and include that letter from Bloomer, highlight those, bullet points that he brings up and say, this is your obligation, not the town's obligation. We are at this time maintaining it, but we can't do anything other than that unless you show us proof of how big the cemetery is there still open plots?
Yeah, I don't think it was an issue with her. This was just,
But if she wants to turn the property over.
oh no. I addressed it. There's one of the letters that was given me to address with her. she wasn't calling us. It was one of the letters, I mean, I'll have a discussion with her, but she wasn't calling us to do this. This was initiated by the board in 2017. And I was addressing her, by the way, this matter also was addressed by the board, and how do you feel about it? And she was willing, hey, I'm willing to discuss it. But it was nothing where she was inquiring.
Well, sounds like to me, like the board entertained this and then moved to spend some fees, legal fees, to have built, and then it sounded to me like the whole issue dropped.
Yeah.
So.
And probably, maybe she never saw it. Maybe no one ever got back to her after the Bloomer letter in 2018. And then no one ever got back to her.
Right, so if you do have a discussion, I'd appreciate that you show her that letter
Right,
one more
I will.
time and say that, you know, the town.
Maybe she's got something. You know, maybe she's got a record or something. So I mean, I'll make a point I'll meet with her.
Is that okay with you guys?
That's fine. I would just make her aware that we're not pushing the issue either.
Right.
If she doesn't want to do it, then
No.
we don't have any real purpose for taking it over.
You know, I wonder if it would be beneficial to go back a little bit, it's not that far back into the minutes, and see just why that came to the board in 2017. Because it's probably something earlier in the year.
I think it was because Zachary Pratt had stopped in 2017 asking for a plot in that cemetery, and then he just stopped in a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
And he was living in California and approached the board about being buried here, getting a family plot.
And he was directed who to reach out to
Right.
at that time, and then he never heard.
Yeah, well.
So all these years, several years later, he's here now, and stopped back in because he never heard several years ago.
Yeah.
So, and wants to get his affairs in order.
Well, he needs to push her.
That's where he's
Right.
at.
All right, so you're gonna follow up on it?
Right. I'll get back to you.
Moving right along.
Sounds like a plan.
I have a mowing contract here for the recreation fields. Anybody want to speak to that?
I believe I'm not sure how to say it, Gilmet Landworks is now the contractor for mowing.
Mm-hmm.
So he signed his end, and just to complete the document, I need the chairman to sign on it.
All right, is there a motion?
Was this previously approved?
No, but he's been mowing, so we probably should approve it.
Yeah.
There's two things we're gonna approve.
It didn't go out for bid yet.
Huh?
It went out for bid?
The rec.
Yes, it did.
Does that.
The rec committee did it.
Did they get more than one bid, or?
Yes, they did. And this guy was the least expensive.
The rec's recommended to the select board.
Yep.
It has to be signed by the select board chair, so in the motion, I'd ask you guys.
I'll make a motion that the select board chair sign the contract on behalf of the board.
For the rec committee.
The rec committee.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. External audit approval, you wanna speak to that, Heidi?
Sure, would love to. So when we were budgeting for fiscal '23, we did budget for an external audit. So this is the paperwork so that after the beginning of the new fiscal year, the year we're currently in can get audited. The total budgeted amount was $15,000, which when they gave us, that figure during budget season, they said it would be an estimate. So we put that in there as our best guess. They did come in and quote us at $15,500. So that is what the contract is for. It's Sullivan Powers. They did our last external audit.
Tell them we don't want to pay the extra 500.
Lucky it weren't 20,000.
Yeah.
And there's two copies there.
Yes.
One is for us and one is for them.
Right, and all, the board members have to sign it, or a majority. And so is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
There's a second for
I'll
discussion.
second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. ARPA funds discussion.
Well, I am actually opposed to spending that kind of money, but
But it protects me and it protects you and it
I
protects
know.
the taxpayers.
And the ARPA funds, you wanna speak to that? Or you want Katie?
I think Katie will start us off.
Okay.
So, April 1st, our first reporting was due for the ARPA funds, which we didn't expend any, so, nothing really to report there, except that we did claim the standard allowance that gave us more flexibility in how we could spend that money. The money has to be obligated by 2024 and then spent by 2026. So, I figured I'd slap it on the agenda and we'll start talking about it. And then you guys can take it away from there.
Okay, so, two of the questions that I know that individually some board members have talked with me about, as well as road commissioner, two big purchase or two big spend items that have been batted around have been the purchase of a grader. I think we all know that our grader is and has been on its last leg. I know that we've spent an obscene amount of money fixing it this year just to make sure it runs. And another one that has been brought up is upgrades or upgrading the town garage. So we did go ahead and ask the VLCT and their ARPA expert if those expenses are eligible, and they said yes. But then where I need your guidance is we asked them, because those would be unbudgeted expenses, what does that mean for us? Do we need to wait until fiscal 24 when we're doing the budget then to be able to start expending this money? And she came back and she said, well, it depends. This question is really related to the town's internal practices around handling unbudgeted expenses, not the rules of ARPA. Every town is different in how they manage their finances. Some have financial plans and policies that dictate how they can treat unbudgeted expenses that arise. Some have no policies, but have undocumented historical precedent that they follow. This is the way we have always done this. Some towns have neither. I don't know where Clarendon lands in the spectrum, and ultimately, the how do we spend the money will rest with the select board, since it is they who would adopt policies and or authorize all expenses. So what I put in front of you tonight is our current purchasing policy, which is very dated and says nothing about unbudgeted expenses. The only thing that's really in there is an emergency clause, but this that would be for something like Irene. So really, that will rest with you on how you want to move forward, and where your comfort level is with the unbudgeted funds. Because clearly we do not have anything budgeted as far as spend for this upcoming fiscal year, fiscal 23, which starts in July, for these ARPA funds. Currently, we've received $360,654.26. And at the end of the day, we'll have just a little over $700,000.
So, in the beginning of July, they give us another check? Is that how that works?
Yeah, we're gonna be getting the second half.
Okay. So I have two questions. No, actually one question. The cash. What's the most important thing right now? Building or the grader?
The grader.
well, I got a question before you even go that route. I mean, how long is it gonna take us? I'm not gonna approve any funds for a town garage if I don't see a plan. Who's gonna be the contractor? What are we building? Are we just gonna say, okay, here's thousands of dollars and do what you want? No, I wanna see plans.
We have blueprints that we can go off from, and if we find an engineer.
I was gonna say, who did the blueprints?
Right. I think they're the ones in Mount Holly. I'll have to look on paper.
I'd like to see them.
Yeah, and I've offered them to you earlier, back, what, 2-3 months ago, we talked about it. And if, I'm sure there's gonna be upgrades to that because of the standards. That'll be a start of the discussion right here.
So,
I mean, a grader is, you know, you order a grader and that's a grader. It's like ordering another piece of equipment, but
That's
a building has gotta be,
a life expectancy.
well, and it's gotta be done right. I mean, there's codes, there's, you know, permits, there's all kinds of things that have to be put into place in order to do this, and, you know.
And the other thing is, if you spend, to buy a grader, just over 300,000. So
when that
basically,
bid for that garage came in, that was $125,000 at that point, but the taxpayers turned it down. Remember, Bob? Yep.
Well, I can guarantee you
Yes.
that OSB was probably $5 a sheet and it's now 45, so.
No, I agree totally.
So that
The concrete-
120,000 is.
the concrete alone, I mean, we just had a guy give me an estimate on one bay before I found these blueprints. And that was 15,000, and now concrete's doubled, so that bill's gonna be 30,000, and then you add another bay to it, which is not, you know, it ain't gonna double.
Well, I think.
I don't wanna do it half-assed.
No,
I don't wanna look down there and see another salt shed. I want something that's gonna be, you know, presentable, it's up to code, and it's gonna last us forever.
One of the issues that we had down there was the septic system. And that has not been upgraded. That was one of the things.
we just
that-
maintained it. That's it.
Pumping it out, is that what, yeah. Did you have a question?
Yeah, my question is, wouldn't it be worth it to drag your feet a while on this until pricing goes down? Because it's gonna go down eventually. I mean, right now is not the time to think about building anything. I don't personally think, but, I mean, maybe to do the investigative work, to look at the prints, you know, get a good idea of what you wanna do.
3-year process.
Kick it around, at least get it in the works, so then if pricing drops,
Well, yeah, like Cash says, it's
Where-
gonna be a long time to get permits you need, get the engineering done. Get, you know,
Right.
it's gonna take a while,
Right.
and Heidi says the money's gotta be spent by 2026.
It has to be obligated by 2024. We have to report to the federal government what it's going to be spent on. And then it has to be spent by 2026.
That was why.
so,
you
I mean,
have time.
things may work out exactly right, if
Right.
that's the case.
Cause it's gonna take a while.
That's what initiated my first question, what's the most important at this time?
Right.
And
My thing is, we're looking at around 700,000. If greater cost is 300,000, at least 400,000 for this building, but we also have the equipment fund. That's, by then, could basically replace what the greater cost.
I would ask,
Provided we don't need another piece of equipment that,
yeah,
The grader is absolutely junk, is what you're saying.
I'm not saying it's junk, but she's tired. We just dumped 25,000 into it.
Well, that's what I don't like
And-
about this town. We spend 25,000 on a truck and then we turn around next year and sell it.
My thing was, when that figure come out, actually, it was 2 different times that went to the garage to get fixed. I don't know, the first time was 11,000, and then the second time around was right up to about 25,000. On the other hand, it needs $9,000 worth of tires.
Yeah, but Cash, how many
But-
times did you trade in a tractor and buy a brand new one because you needed tires?
I never bought brand new.
It's okay. I mean, you've mentioned the tires before. That doesn't even make any sense. You don't trade
As far
in.
as I'm concerned, the tires are round and they're hard runner.
You don't trade in a tractor. You don't trade in a car or a truck because it needs new tires. You buy new tires and you deal with it, or you run them. I mean, it's not like these tires need to
then
be
you
a certain
have-
depth of thread before.
with a grader,
tread
is-
before-
Evolved. The
You have a
tires
lot of-
evolved.
you have a lot of hydraulic and all this kind of stuff, issues.
A lot of this all got fixed.
Yeah.
How many hours on that thing, Cash?
There's, Like $9,600, almost 10,000
yeah,
hours.
okay.
Well, I would suggest, just to get us up to speed a little bit, getting those, plans that you found down there located.
Yeah.
And I think if you look on the date there, it was when Bowen was.
2004.
Yeah, when he was, let's see if we could just, to investigate, give them off to, somebody that does that work and see what it would cost, because we can't go forward with that building unless, as Art said,
Right.
you know, we get all kinds of.
We don't know if we can put it where the plans are because of this building.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Worst case scenario, at one point we discussed the old ball field over by the airport.
Yeah.
Using that because we had the new field built, using that as for the road crew and all the equipment and stuff. The downside was crossing Route 7 because most of the.
I'm not concerned about crossing Route 7. Thing is, we're more central here in the town, in this location, to disperse out.
So to upgrade this though, if we can do that legally here, you know, the state laws have changed, wetlands and all this other crap.
That's another issue, you know, with, you know, waste and stuff.
Well, why don't
Maybe
you
we
see
need to
if we
find
can't-
maybe we need to find like a project manager that can do this and knows what the hell he's doing.
That's beyond me.
Yeah, I know, I'm just saying. Maybe we should find somebody, you know, like, Russell Corporation or somebody like that, somebody that knows what the hell they're doing.
And actually, John Russell would probably be.
Yeah. He might be more than willing to.
But legally, we'd
help us out.
To do that, we'd have to go out for the bids, because you just can't, especially on a project of that nature.
If we pick his brain a little bit, if he donate his time and stuff, we still have to do bid.
No. But when you formally start a project, you have to, you know that. You have
Just to
have
get
at least-
started.
Yeah, at least 2 bids. We prefer 3, the town does.
Well, we can't send out for bids if we don't know
Don't
what the
know
hell
what
we're
you're
building.
building.
We gotta figure out what the heck, what we need, what we're building. And then you can send it out to bids. And there's nobody in this room that knows what we're gonna
I'm the first one to say
require.
that. I have not the slightest idea.
Yeah, I mean, I
I'm
built
not
my house,
an
I built my
engineer.
barn, I built my garage, but do I know anything about a town garage? I have no clue. It's a commercial building.
So do we have existing prints or we don't have?
Yes,
them?
we do.
We do.
They were drawn in 2004 by a.
Yeah, but at least that's a start.
It's a
Yes,
start.
it's a
It is.
start.
That's what I'm saying.
And it's,
Yeah.
it's a layout with that down there, what it is now. And nothing followed through. And apparently went before the voters and got voted down, which is too bad.
Yeah, it was.
Because now it's gonna cost
And then
8-10 times
the
more.
town hall was supposed to be redone, and that was $150,000 from a guy from where, over in,
Castleton.
yeah, and he wanted to put a elevator because that upstairs was all gonna be redone, and they turned that down too.
So if you've seen the prints and you handle that department, do they look like they're acceptable to you?
To me, they are.
They are.
Yes, with the
So I mean,
frost walls
that's a great starting point.
and with the, yeah, with the foundation that's
Right,
poured.
so it'll
They
serve your
actually
purpose.
Had a retaining, the portable waste box retaining wall to go around to hold the bank back
Right.
away from it.
Right. But even, so let's assume you don't build it right here. Does the building still remain useful for your purpose? And not only for right now, maybe look into the future a little bit, if our town grows or...
That's the issue we have. We already changed out 2 garage doors because our trucks wouldn't fit in there with the wings on. And now we got 3 trucks with wings on. There's 1 door we can't change out because of the design of the building. And
Right. So maybe these are things, we got a starting point that we can look at if we have to expand the footprint, we do it, and then go from there and then sit down with somebody, if Russell will talk to you or whoever, and say, hey, here's what we're thinking, these are the old blueprints.
See, and I believe the doors were designed for the bigger trucks.
Right.
14 foot
Right.
width, I believe.
And that's what you gotta look at. If we're gonna look at building a new garage, make sure it's gonna not only do what you wanna do right now, but
Today
maybe a
and
little
tomorrow,
bit in the
right.
future too.
Has to be.
But to Heidi's point, we have to get this knowledge before when, 23 or 24?
24.
24.
So that they don't take those funds away from us.
Right. No, I understand that, but,
That's why I'm suggesting that with the existing
We might need it.
blueprints.
We might need those funds to plow snow. That's $6 a
well,
gallon this winter.
you're right. You're absolutely correct.
All right, let's,
When you get it free time, call me, I'll come down and we'll take a look at that.
Yeah, they're right in the filing cabinet. Yeah, we talked about it, 3 months ago there, you were gonna stop down,
Yeah, I know, but you've been busy and your
You're here.
hip and you had issues. And
tour the shop and stuff.
so, yeah, just let me know when you got spare time.
just remember one thing.
You better call me up, say I'm coming. I'll say, okay, I'll make it work.
Just remember one thing. That's 2 select board members.
Mike, I don't wanna hear it. I don't wanna hear it.
If you invite Bob down or Rob down.
I'll leave.
Or even myself, that's 3. We have to warn a meeting. I'm just giving you some education.
Mike, I don't wanna hear
Very
it.
educated, Blake.
You irritated me already today.
I
So I don't wanna hear it.
You know, talking about this garage, and none of us know what the future brings for the town.
Nope.
But what's the possibility that that whole area would be too small 15 years down the road?
That's something that, with the real estate we have, it's tight all the time. But we just make it work.
Yeah.
So therefore, the perfect scenario is have a place in this area, build new facility, and I've all said this before, with the fire department, with the highway department, with the town hall.
Well, you know, Heidi
I'm
was
going
saying,
beyond there.
Heidi was saying 750,000. I can tell you right now that
This,
Bridgewater put in a fire department that cost them $1.5 million. So
this,
you gotta, you know,
that's where I was going with a grader. It's 300,000 for a grader right now. That takes almost half of that. Even if we refurbish, we still have in 3 years 700,000 back there. I almost think that garage with all the permits and the fees and the fire suppression system and everything, you're not gonna build it for 700,000. I don't think. But I'm not an engineer. To tell you.
could be right. You could be right. Like I said, that they built that fire department over there. It's over $1 million. So
Right.
Yeah. 1.3 or something like.
And-
Well,
and
So therefore,
and they built
and I
it.
preached to Bob years ago, because when I was fireman, I heard the chopping done, because that was the most expensive piece of equipment on the farm that took a lot of fuel, labor, and time. This is a time to look. Do we need an actual road crew to do all the plowing instead of hiring it done? With the expense of the trucks, now we're looking at $1 million garage.
I've been saying that for years. I'm
And
sorry.
I've said it.
I've been
long
saying
time.
that for a long time.
Long time.
yeah. Well, look what was it Pittsfield in the paper the other day? 450,000 for a salt shed. Woo! Somebody want thinking there, in my opinion.
I mean, is that option right? I don't know. Something to investigate, you know?
Well, let's just get something out there.
You still need, you still need a road crew per se,
Yeah.
as far as at least 2 people.
Well, I
Some
was
need a
like,
small truck.
like I said, I think you should have started it years ago, even in a small scale, to do, Misty Meadows Circle and whatever the little roads that you guys don't even like doing. Hire it out, see how it works out, see what it costs. It's a start.
Well, that's all budget conversations.
Yep, I know.
You have to wait till
And you're looking at truck.
One other quick question. When you're looking at this building, are you looking at a wood structure, a metal structure?
I haven't seen the plans.
That looks like a wooden structure.
Are we set in stone on that? Would it be cheaper to look at a metal building?
We're not set in stone no way. You gotta be open-minded about this.
Yeah.
Well, if Art's gonna come down and you guys sit down, take a look at it, and there'll be some recommendations, but we gotta keep in mind that the treasurer has to be involved with this, the long term, so.
Well, I ain't paying for it.
Yeah, you will.
Oh, yeah, you will. Taxpayer.
That's why you're on the select board for $1,800.
All right, moving right along. Heidi, do you have anything else you want to?
Yeah, two things. Just want to make sure that the select board warrants are floating and you've all seen them to get them approved. Okay. Did I miss the meeting minutes being approved for May 9th?
I haven't heard that.
Oh.
That was in the beginning of the agenda.
Yeah, but I was so involved with the.
Right. That's why I brought up the warrants, because I didn't hear that either.
No, I did say the warrants are sitting right here.
Okay.
But the
But I
approval
did not.
Didn't happen.
Approval of, yeah.
Okay.
So, given that you brought that up, I'd entertain a motion, with the regular meeting of May 9th, 2022 minutes. Is there any corrections or deletions?
I move we accept them as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, is there any corrections or deletions?
I didn't see any.
Marjorie just let me know that her name was not on the attendees list, so I've corrected that.
Okay.
And
We don't want her on the list anyway.
I abstained because I believe I wasn't here.
Yes, you weren't.
Who seconded that?
I did.
Between them two.
We're leaving groups, we're leaving people off the
So all
list.
those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
And I have to vote so that there's at least three votes. Aye. Anything else, I?
I did provide you all with a current budget status report since we are nearing the end of the fiscal year. I have reached out to the department heads to let them know where they stand with their budgets. If anybody would like a copy, I can certainly print one, for the public. That's all I have.
Katie, you have anything you'd?
Just to bring it back, when we talked about, town welcome signs, tree signs, you had asked me to reach out to the principal at the elementary school to see if they'd be interested in an art competition. And he did respond that they think it's a great idea, but wait till the fall to do the competition. So I said I would follow up with them then. Just so you know.
Thanks for doing that. Anything else? Katie, anything else?
Oh, no, that's all.
Would our zoning administrator have any comments, seeing that you're in here tonight?
Everything's going, pretty well.
Okay, good job.
One pending and 13 year to date.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like 5 all in one.
You're on real quick.
Well, good. All right. Art, do you have any concerns?
Does the town clerk have anything? Okay, thank you. No, I don't have anything.
I'm good. Bob?
No, I'd just like to, thank Art and Gloria for their assistance the other night with our committee meeting. Gloria was gracious enough to take minutes for us and so on, and, outside that, I'm good.
Yes?
I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second for discussion?
No seconds.
Oh.
That means we gotta stay. There's no seconds.
Guess what?
He seconded it.
Oh, I didn't hear you.
I didn't hear him either.
I didn't hear it either.
So, there's a motion
Louder,
made,
Bob.
second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you.